Welcome to KLANA'S Pleasure Hour. Klana, that's me. In this show, we explore conscious sexuality, body, mind, and spirituality, and how this is connected with pleasure and our personal growth and our relationships. Discover how to have more pleasure, more harmony in your relationships, and an amazing and fulfilling sex life. Hello and welcome to KLANA'S Pleasure Hour. I am Klana, the pleasure alchemist, and I work with men, women, and couples who are ready for a change and ready to have more pleasure in their lives and the relationships of their dreams, and of course, an amazing sex life. My focus at the moment are unfulfilled women who I teach to live an orgasmic life. And with this series, KLANA'S Pleasure Hour, I want to create more awareness and more pleasure in people's lives and interviewing other experts in the area of mind, soul, relationships, and sexuality gives you more complementing information. And today I'm happy to have Heike Prevrhal and Chris Menné. Do I pronounce that right?
Menné.
Menné, okay. So thank you for being here. Heike is in Germany and Chris is in Colorado. And I am in Austin at the moment. So Heike is a spiritual coach who coaches people, like the name says, and heals them, and is also an EFT person. So she teaches emotional freedom technique, which is the tapping. Maybe you've heard about that. And Chris is a transpersonal psychotherapist and coach. He concentrates on relationships. Heike, do you want to start?
Go ahead, Heike.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us here, for inviting us in. Pleasure to be here already. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to add anything right now. Okay. Let's just get right into it. Or Chris, if you want to add anything in here, share more.
Sure. I have a sense that what might be a nice piece is that when Heike and I met, one of the things we realized is that we, both of us, have been, if you want to call it, like seekers or on the path for decades. And that a real passion there. And that I will say, in the work I do, I'm very committed to clarity and really seeing the through lines of truth through all the world's teachings. And Heike and I resonated right away on that approach to how we both live our lives and personally, and the inspiration that we bring to want to raise consciousness and to do so in a real consistent, high integrity way that also embraces joy and also our dark sides too, so that when it all comes together, we really open up, and this commitment to this sort of clarity is something that Heike and I really have a sharing. And
and also what you just started saying, to really bring it to life, to not just talk about it, but to really bring it to everyday life, to the people, to the relationships that we are living with, that we are interacting with. And it might get messy, it might get joyous, it might be painful at times, but not just talk about it or pretend, but really, make it applicable right where we are in relationship.
Exactly. And that's going to be the topic of today, because we're talking about
see what we got for us.
Different kind of relationships than usual, because Heike and Chris are both in a relationship with other people and with each other. That's the right word.
Whatever that means, being in a relationship, that's where it already starts.
Okay,
Right.
good. Start out with that, Heike. Let us know your opinion about that. I think this is going to be very interesting talk.
Yeah, I'll say a few words about that. It all used to be very set in stone and clear. It's like, okay, this is my partner. This is the person I'm in a relationship. This is the person I have sex with. I mean, it seems that for many people it is that clear cut and defined that way. And over the years, it just doesn't hold so much truth to me anymore, because I both experience like high intimacy with people that I don't have sex with, for example, or I know that there can be sexuality or physical intimacy and it's not so intimate. So this by itself could be a big discussion of what is a relationship. And what I find now in many ways more helpful is to really look at, like, how do we relate to each other? What's the relating in the moment like? And then, of course, I mean, there's still definitions, or I'm not in a place where I completely let go of concepts yet, even though that might be, I don't know how far that can go. But for me, one key component really is relating to, how do we relate to each other in the moment, rather than fixing it into a contract. Okay, this is the relationship we have. It has to look like that, because, and this is also part of the work that I do together with Chris, like looking at all the places how we go unconscious in relationships, all the expectations. Like they have a whole list of things how you can fall asleep in this place that we call relationship, that we want to be the fulfillment of all our dreams. And often it does go another direction if we don't keep it alive.
Yeah, there's you know, in this audience and people that are interested in the kind of work that you're doing, Klana, and that whatever you want to call it, whether it's being spiritually inclined or open-minded, alternative lifestyles, new age, there is a very and a more, you know, technical term sometimes is postmodern. But in any of those terminologies, this is a lifestyle where we're freer from the traditional structures of how things show up once we're attracted to somebody, or if we start becoming lovers or move into a space where two people are seeing each other a lot. And then there's really, you can have any kind of a relationship you want. Things are so opened up now. The only criteria is that if you're going to be in integrity. So there's a real interesting part in Heike, and I really resonate very deeply with this, that in that space of freedom comes a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because the unconscious life is to be attracted to somebody, or to like just follow our desires or follow our impulse, or just wind up in some unexamined way through our behavior where we're coupling a lot, or we're having sex a lot, or we're spending lots of time together, and we don't question our motives. We're just there, like living our habits in a way. And so, yes, with all this freedom, you can take all that down. But when you remove all of those unexamined beliefs and structures, there's an enormous amount of responsibility to show up, to really like be who you are. So to clarify how you are perceiving this person that you're with, are you actually seeing them? Are you in integrity with your expression, or are you doing things out of fear, or are you doing things because you want attention, because you are being self-centered, or do you want to connect with someone to wake up more? And in that process, yes, there's going to be attraction, there's going to be desire, there's going to be sexuality, there's going to be feelings of attachment. But do we just follow habitual things, Or do we, in our experience with another, as all of that's happening, are we really exploring who we are and how we're showing up? And that part is where Heike and I share a huge passion, because that may be really, really erotic and really sexual. And it may also be like tear you down to the core as far as recognizing how much, in some ways, we are all wanting that experience of unity or oneness with another, and how to keep on living that in our continual interactions. And in that openness and honesty, one of the things that Heike and I have seen and are very committed to is the, you know, it's a heavy word, if you want to call it awakening or becoming more aware, but in our relating and with our partners, and our partners know each other, and the amount of stuff that we have clarified and worked through in how we all experience ourselves and each other is really, really powerful and beautiful and remarkable. And this is a turn on that can involve sexuality, but sexuality is just a component. So that's where we're at. And I am very appreciative to have been having these experiences with Heike now for about 1.5 years.
Wow. Could you please just go a step back and tell us about your connection?
Sure. Yeah.
How did you meet? What's going on? What kind of a relationship or connection?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. You're leaving that to me. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'll bring it, but I just, you know, I'd say, you know, we can go back and forth on this.
Exactly. Just talk as far as you want to be public.
So we met a couple of years ago now at a workshop where it was about transparent communication, a really like spiritual, deep, intense workshop. And we were there with a bunch of people, and then basically the workshop came to an end. And
translation, we were very close.
Yeah. It was in Germany, and Chris was the only American participant, and I was there to also translate. So I was in Chris's ear for the entire weekend. And we just, like, a great connection happened. And there was another friend of ours that Chris had known before. And at the end of the workshop, we basically just hugged goodbye and appreciated the time. And I went back on the train to Hamburg, and Chris and the other man, went back to where they were going, like to his place where Chris was planning to stay another night before going back to the US. And
I could take it up from here if you want, unless you want to continue.
Go for it.
Okay.
And continue.
So, yeah, and just to fill in a very significant piece here, this is what I love about our relationship, Heike. The workshop itself, transparent communication, and a recurrency training for people to facilitate that work.
Yes.
So there's a through line here that Heike and I have, like we're automatically in the same place. Like, if we're going to be facilitators of this work, are we really going to be living life transparently? Are we going to walk the talk?
Absolutely.
Right. Now this might seem really obvious.
It's not.
It's not. There is it all over the place in the world of personal growth and spiritual development. There are these places where people really hold out and don't open up. I'm not going to tell you this, or I'll do my expanded work, but over here I have my secret life, or I'll be too afraid to actually express in my relationship, my desires for other people. Right away, Heike and I were like, oh, you know, we're feeling attracted to each other. And I was asking her about her marriage, and she was expressing that there's nothing to hide there. And I was in a process at about 1 year into a relationship of trying to determine if I really wanted to go deeper in that relationship. I'm still with this person, but we had sort of separated a little bit at that point. But the bottom line is everybody knows everything, even though we're attracted to each other.
Yeah. And
then, so we left different directions after the work. And then myself and this other gentleman, who Heike also has some feelings for. And I was there with him in his place. And we just had this consideration, like, you know, we miss her. Maybe we should just like ring her up. So we got on the app and said, come to Berlin if you can. But but you know, make sure that your husband's cool with all of this. And
they
so
sent me like the train schedule.
Yes. So yeah. So and then Heike responded and was like, well, wait a minute, and then maybe I can do this. So
okay, I'll take over here.
Okay,
so
good.
This reaches me at home. I just got home, opened the door in Hamburg. I'm just unpacking my bag from the course, just greeting my kids. My husband is still at work, and then I get this message, and it's like I get it, and I'm like, yeah, I want to go there. It's not even a question. There's nothing weird about it. It's just a total clear physical, it's a very clear all levels. Yes, I want to go. And the good thing is that my husband and I do have a really well-established, trusting relationship. And it's not like an open relationship where things like this happen all the time. It's really not. But the honesty is there. And so I just called him up and told him, hey, Sven, I'm gonna go. I just arrived back home safely and I'm gonna take off again. I'm going to Berlin to meet these two men again. And this might sound strange, but this is what I'm gonna do. And he's like, okay. And that's what I did. I caught one train later and was on my way to, see these two men again.
Wow.
And
courageous action.
Yeah, and you know, it felt like I have to do this because like sometimes there are moments where you just feel it's right, and it's kind of like you ordered something at the universe, and if you then don't take it, it's like, and I can't tell why or what, but it just was clear it was a good thing.
Looks as if all the three of you followed your intuition.
Yeah, something was online and felt right.
Yeah.
And
in it, you know, again, walking the talk here on the transparency part is that, you know, as soon as Heike said she was on her way, then this gentleman and I, we had never met her husband, but we found his picture on Facebook and we were like, okay, let's his presence here, because clearly Heike is very open with this. In other words, the piece of inclusion. One of the things that goes on in multiplicities is that somehow we have this primary relationship and then, oh, I'm going to do something over here on the side. Now, that may be, again, unlimited choices, unlimited structures. But the thing that now I can't necessarily speak for Heike and this other gentleman, not her husband, this other gentleman, but just to go back to like desire, motivation, sexuality, I would say the thing that shows up a lot, like all the time with Heike and I, is that, you know, the interest and the desire, well, I'll speak for myself, but it seems to be mutual. This is where the work gets great, is that we really resonate around our commitment to consciousness work. And we seem to share a lot of similar perceptions. We seem to see the world in similar ways. Now with that, then I noticed then sexual desire shows up. I want to, or the desire to be close. So I'm not necessarily pursuing pleasure, but it's more, I have pleasure in the association and we're of the opposite gender. So then there's a sense of wanting to explore that. So it's not just pursuing an open relationship. There's a sense of, I like this human being and we are of the opposite gender. So I don't want to necessarily do something just to have pleasure, but I want to experience that aspect of our existence together. And to this day, we have not had intercourse. We've had a little bit of intimate contact, but there is a sense, and Sven, your husband, and my partner, Elena, they're both comfortable in this conversation, and also, you know, a little bit of fear, a little bit of unknown, but we're all trying to get together sometime as individuals that are interested in each other. We're not getting together to have some type of polyamorous relationship. If that arises when we're together, then so be it. So there's an element here of being open with the attraction and sexual energies as an expression, as a way to live a fuller truth, rather than following the sex or the pleasure, but just to include it. There's something that Sven says all the time: everything's welcome. Everything's welcome. And then when you're in contact, then you can see what actually is real and what's desired or not, and how to move with that. So it's very alive, without putting boxes or walls on what is sexuality, what is attraction. It's just another aspect of all of the ways we can connect. And that's, yeah, so she came down. We all spent a night together. It was very short. When we first all got together, we sat around a table and we did the practice of being transparent. Like what, you know, we said, set some boundaries. I said, I don't want to have intercourse. I'm still sort of grieving a relationship, but I'm noticing desire. And I had to leave at like 2 a.m. And so, and yeah, and we cuddled and laid around a little bit, and it was continually what's happening now. And when we noticed that we would be going unconscious, like in sort of like, oh, wow, this is so great. We had a bell. So everybody was free to ring the bell. It's like, okay, I'm starting to check out now. It's like,
let's slow down. Right. I think every single couple should have a bell close, or couple or more. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. And then, you know, and then since then, the three of us brought in our respective partners. So it's like 6 of us, and we relate semi-frequently via this kind of format around what's the most beautiful and the most difficult challenges in our primary relationship, and things that are going on with our attractions to others. Mm-hmm. So it's all open. And what I find to be so remarkable is that in that openness, and sort of like pushing through these unexamined fears, that those fears of multiplicity and openness are so much of an illusion. When we actually get through them, the contact and the joy and the release of knowing you can make your own decisions, and in that process you become very caring and responsible toward others. It's not you're not out there grabbing for stuff. You start to, your heart opens and your capacity to care expands, and this of course raises your life energy, and things can become erotic, but it's a real expanded space.
Yeah, and this is what's been happening in the group of 6, that I think all of us again and again in different scenarios, different moments, that were challenging for each couple or amongst each other. It's this realizing, this felt sense of whatever happens, I'm not falling out of the group. Because I think that's one of, like for most people, sure for me, with multiplicities, I think the biggest fear is not that my partner is having fun with somebody else. It's more like this exclusion, like if all of a sudden you're all gone.
Yeah.
That gets, like, to me, that gets scary. Mm-hmm. And I assume for many it does. Mm-hmm. And if there is again and again in little moments this sense of, okay, if I'm about to fall off the boat, there's somebody who's gonna bring me back in and is caring enough to at least check in or something, like this caring that Chris is talking about. And this doesn't mean that we know. I mean, there is an element where we don't know, and where things might shift, and where there is more attention for one person than for another. But there's a generosity that comes up, mm-hmm. and the degree of fear seems to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, currently a lot of that is happening like in this setting on the computer, but also through a WhatsApp group that's very integrated in life. It's very instant. So it seems like distant, but it's actually something about it is very instant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so now,
thank you for sharing that story, your story.
Mm.
And what I think is great is that the openness that you are talking together, the authenticity out of which those things appear. And of course, if you are open, then the fear goes down, because fear is only the things that you don't know.
Well said.
because then you can trust the openness. You don't know what's going to happen, but you kind of start knowing, oh, I will be informed. I will get a chance to relate to whatever is happening and find my way of how I can relate.
Yeah.
Which might be needing to take some distance or whatever it is.
Yes, and I guess is as well in my work, this is a big part in my program, the communication part, so that the people are really communicating well with each other. That's the basis, and I guess that's the same with you in your work. That you are teaching
with more people, it becomes easier because the communication in just a couple is so limited, and many times by now, like the others, purely by witnessing and being present, really popped some intense partner dynamics or somehow brought more light into them. Not like dissolving them so that they are all gone, but really bringing it up to a different level of being able to be with it or to discern what's going on. And that's, gosh, that's like years of therapy that's being saved there.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's important to mention here too that now, Heike and Sven have been together for 20 years, and there does seem to be a very broad structural base that you guys share. But the other two of us, the other two couples, we've only known each other for 2 years, and so we're in a space of exploring about whether or not our respective two relationships are going to go deeper. That decision point where you start getting to like, well, are we going to go into more of a long-term exploration? And there's been a few times where each of our other two couples, myself included, have been considering maybe not coupling. And that didn't pop us out of this group of 6. We could bring that possibility into the group to get reflected. In other words, there's not a mandate for being together as a couple. Yeah. It's more about all of us sharing our experiences and seeing, especially with the 4 of us that are single, if we're a fit, if we're a match, and we bring that into the space. And even though, Heike and Sven have been together 20 years, I've noticed that in being a psychotherapist, I've been blown away by watching Sven and Heike go through enormous clarification of like decades of patterns like that, and opening up so much more, and the clarity of the decision making with myself and my partner and the other couple, where everything's allowed. Everything's welcome. And in that space, some of it's scary, some of it's difficult, but when everything's there and all these eyes are on everything, things self-organize, and the sense that, wow, life is here to support us in any expression. And in that space, it's not like we're running around and having this experience and that experience, but it's a sense of really being supported. And then a directionality does show up, how we find ourselves in peace and contentment with our expression. So it's powerful, and fun a lot of the time.
And we want to share this, but people get scared.
Yes, there's a lot of fear in terms of.
Yeah, it's out of our conditioning big time. So
Mhm.
you used a word, multiplicities, which I noted. I wrote it
Mhm.
down because I like it somehow. So because our human mind usually likes to have it in boxes somehow.
Yes.
What can you, do you have a definition or your own definition? What's the difference between polyamory and multiplicities and what you are living, or how? Yeah, okay, I know now that you would call it multiplicities. And that's my assumption. But what's the difference, for instance, for polyamory? Because that's a term that people nowadays know better.
Sure. Yeah, I could make that distinction, but I don't want to, do you want to take a run on that, Heike? Or okay. So I would say, the question, polyamory, multiplicities.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something with polyamory in general where there's an element of like, okay, so I'm an individual, and it seems as human beings, we have a tendency to want to pair up with one person. That seems to be in our design. But then over time, invariably, whether we acknowledge it or not, we have desires for other people. Now, and then we either say, okay, that's not supposed to happen. I'm not going to have those desires. I'm going to stay in my primary relationship. Or then people are polyamorous. It says, okay, go and seek other partners or follow your interest. Now, I would say here in this space that there is definitely a honoring of the natural desire to be with one other person. And also, as far as the multiplicity, as we get closer and we know each other more, to recognize that in that space of openness in all of us, and with myself, with other people that I know outside of this group, is to not be ashamed or withhold my sense of having an interest or a desire for someone and seeing where that might go, but not necessarily going after it and pursuing it. So like the multiplicities are more of a reflection of that in your own world, or I'll speak for myself, being primarily partnered, that when I do have a sense of wanting to connect with Heike more and wondering what that might be like to be intimate, to be able to express that freely as an impulse to my partner, and wherever that may go with Heike and I, who can say, or with any of us, as we sometimes have some interests in one another, but it's more about being open to the possibilities that are already living in you. They're there. It's bringing open expression that matches your inner, previously hidden desires. And when those two come together, there's an integrity that shows up that's startlingly alive. And so that's multiplicities in my experience.
Okay, but I still didn't get the difference, to be honest.
Okay, so
when do you use polyamory and when do you use the multiplicity?
Well, again, you can do anything in this postmodern or new or free thinking new age realm. So naming anything tends to, in a way, already redefine something when we're trying to free ourselves to be openly expressive and to live following our truest expression and our responsibility to ourselves and our responsibility to others. So I would say multiplicities has more to do with engaging all the possibilities that may not involve sex, but it could. Whereas polyamory seems to have a driver of, I'm going to go and seek another partner. I would say that's the biggest distinction here. I mean, Heike, what do you?
The first time I ever came across the word multiplicities is when I started talking to you, Chris. So before I only heard polyamory. So I don't have my own definition for it, but it resonates what you say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe it's also bringing in another word, because maybe sometimes, but
Yeah.
so like sometimes in groups where polyamory is lived, and it totally depends on how you live that. I guess it could be really integrated and caring, or there could be other places where there is like an ego indulgence in free sexuality.
Yes.
That's not what I'm interested in. But
Right.
I'm also not in the place to say that this is what polyamorous people do, because I think there's all different degrees of awareness. So I don't think it depends.
Right. Right. And actually, you know, this might be getting a little more clarified here. One of the things that we, the six of us share is an interest in a teacher, Thomas Hubel, but also that we're very interested in the work of other teachers and how all these things integrate. And one of the more clarifying things that we all work with around one of the discussions that this individual, Thomas Hubel, has is around sexuality, is that all of us are extremely variable. It may be their design to be monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
That's where their best growth is going to be. That's where their real awakening is going to be. So to really burn through their fears of, let's say, intimacy and closeness is in monogamy. But then what can go on is, if that's where you really meant to be to do your awakening and your evolution, a lot of people run away to polyamory.
Yeah, so the motives behind it.
As I'm not going to do that burning one-on-one work. I'm going to run over here and get all the pleasure. And then equally important is that some people that are very that are polyamorous, and then their work may be in the polyamorous or the multiplicity space, where they learn to deal with insecurity and jealousy and possessiveness and control. So, but then because all those things are so intense, then they run away to monogamy. In other words, anywhere between monogamy or polyamory, people are running the other direction to go to the thing that's easier and more indulgent, rather than locating where in this space, with our capacity to connect and also be sensual and sexual, where is your edge where your heart will open? You will see and locate your fears, and you will evolve. And in that, you become a more awake person. So that's the multiplicity piece. It's not one or the other. It's like, who are you and where are you and how is this happening? And in that space, when you're exploring that much, you can't help but just become like a more here person. It's messy at times, but I sense that's a really big distinction about multiplicities. And it might about being monogamous for a little while and then opening up to another experience to see who and what you are and who and what's going on. So it's more about everything's welcome rather than one way or the other.
Cool. This is a great last word, I would say. Do you have a very last word?
Heike? She's laughing. That's a lot of good words right there.
These are the best words ever.
I'm just listening. This is part of like listening if something wants to come that I might not even know wants to come. So to me, this is part of it, of being present with what is.
As what I get out of this conversation, which was very, very interesting and maybe new to a lot of our viewers is that all the three of us seem to be advocates of living a free life in authenticity, to make it really short, so that you really should be who you are or explore who you are, no matter what labels we put on this thing. And sometimes you need to go through a little bit of a rough time. Not always take the easy part. Did I get that right, Chris?
Yeah, I would say that that names a lot of the magnetism to this space. Mm-hmm.
So, and if you out there are getting curious about these topics in whichever intensity, so you can contact us, and I will put the details after the video so that this is possible for you. And thank you so much, Heike and Chris, for being here with me together. It was completely interesting, and for being so open and honest on a delicate topic.
Well, thank you, Klana, for having us, and I appreciate the space that you're holding for these very important explorations that are enjoyable and pleasurable, but also bring us more to our true nature and can really help us all show up in the world more. And that's really needed right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Heike, too.
Yeah, thank you for having us here and for doing this work.